Unpacking Dick Halloran's enigmatic box in Welcome to Derry. Richard Dick Halloran has long been one of Stephen King's most quietly pivotal characters, a man whose presence threads through The Shining, Dr. Sleep, and It, linking these stories through a shared psychic ability known as The Shining. While he's often remembered as the kindly cook who helps young Danny Torrance navigate the horrors of the Overlook Hotel, Welcome to Derry expands his role significantly, pulling pieces from King's wider multiverse to give him one of the most disturbing character arcs on television. The HBO series deepens the mythology that was first explored in King's novels, giving Dick Halloran a spotlight episode in Neibolt Street. This episode not only explores his traumatic past but also reveals the origins and vulnerabilities of his infamous box, a mental construct introduced in Dr. Sleep. This box is a psychic container used to trap malevolent entities, but Welcome to Derry shows us what happens when it's forced open. To understand the weight of what this means, it's important to look at Halloran's history across the Stephen King universe. Dick Halloran, a life shaped by The Shining. Dick's story begins in New Hampshire, where his shining ability first manifests during childhood. He discovers he can communicate telepathically with his grandmother, Rose Halloran, a woman who shares this psychic gift. But his childhood is far from peaceful. Living under the roof of his abusive grandfather, Andy Halloran, Dick endures relentless physical, emotional, and sexual torment. Andy despises Dick's bond with his grandmother and treats his shining as an aberration. This period of Halloran's life becomes one of the most defining in the King canon, forming the core of the fear he must later learn to contain. These moments create the groundwork for the mental lockbox technique that becomes so central to his character. As Dick grows older, he joins the U.S. Army and becomes a cook in Easy Company, a unit from New Hampshire. His cooking skills eventually lead him to co-found the Black Spot, a nightclub for black soldiers posted in Derry, Maine. This club becomes a symbol of community and respite, until it is burned down in a racially motivated attack by the Legion of White Decency, King's thinly veiled stand-in for the Ku Klux Klan. Dick's shining allows him to save numerous clubgoers, including the father of Mike Hanlon, a future member of the Losers Club. It's here, in it, that his life intersects with Pennywise's domain for the first time. Dick becomes one of the very few adults capable of perceiving it in its monstrous forms. This ability marks him as a rare, sane witness, someone whose shining lets him glimpse Pennywise's true nature.
60 boxes of dried milk, 30 12-pound bags of sugar.
The Overlook Hotel and the Passing of Knowledge. Dick's connection to the Torrance family in The Shining is where most readers first encounter him. As the Overlook Hotel's head chef, he bonds immediately with young Danny, recognizing the boy's powerful shining. Dick warns Danny about the dangers lurking inside the Overlook, telling him that some places shine just like people do. After Jack Torrance becomes overtaken by the hotel's malevolent force, Dick travels back to the isolated resort to help Danny and Wendy escape. His attempt to save them cements him as one of King's most morally courageous characters. But what Dr. Sleep later reveals is that Dick's mentorship of Danny continues long after the events of the Overlook. When the traumatized young boy is haunted by lingering spirits from the hotel, most notably the rotting corpse of Mrs. Massey from room 217, Dick returns to help him once again. This is when Dick shares the secret he learned from his grandmother Rose, how to build a mental lockbox. The lockbox becomes one of the central metaphors of Dr. Sleep, a tool for containing horrors, a method of personal survival, and a symbol of generational knowledge passed from one gifted shiner to another. Danny uses this technique throughout his life, eventually unleashing the ghosts inside during the final battle with the True Knot. The box comes to life in Welcome to Derry. In Welcome to Derry, Dick Halloran's psychic box isn't just a metaphor. The series transforms it into a dramatic, terrifying centerpiece of Episode 5, Neibolt Street. The U.S. military, under General Shaw, launches an operation deep into the tunnels beneath Derry. Their goal is misguided but clear. They believe they can trap Pennywise and weaponize its power. With a shiner like Dick among them, they assume they'll have an edge. But Pennywise is an ancient eldritch entity, older than human civilization, impossible to contain, and far more cunning than any military mind can comprehend. When Dick encounters Pennywise in the tunnels, the clown doesn't attack him physically. Instead, it invades his mind. The psychic intrusion forces Dick to relive the darkest chapters of his childhood, dragging him into a mental recreation of his bathroom where his abusive grandfather tormented him. Here, Pennywise manifests as Andy Halloran, blending the lines between a child's trauma and a cosmic predator's manipulation. The twisted figure berates Dick for using The Shining, just as his grandfather once did, before revealing a locked metal box, Dick's mental lockbox made manifest. In this psychic realm, the box holds what Dick has locked away: pain, shame, fear, and the psychic residue of the abuses he endured. Pennywise threatens Dick's beloved grandmother Rose, demanding he open the box. Pressured and terrified, Dick relents. The consequences are immediate and devastating. What happens when the box opens? After the encounter, Dick wanders out of the tunnels in a near catatonic fog. He sees the spirit of a recently killed soldier, Randy Mancuso, walking the grounds. This visual is the clearest sign that his box, once tightly sealed, has burst open. His shining is no longer contained. The mental boundaries that once protected him have collapsed. This moment mirrors the trauma Danny experiences in Dr. Sleep before Dick teaches him how to contain the Overlook's ghosts. But now, Dick is the one stripped bare, vulnerable to every negative shining, every restless spirit, every psychic echo that once remained locked away. The implications for Welcome to Derry are enormous. A psychic as powerful as Halloran, suddenly without defenses, becomes a prime target and a potential tool for Pennywise. The ancient creature feeds on fear, and Dick's fear is now spilling out unchecked. How this connects to Stephen King's multiverse. The box's opening doesn't merely serve Dick's character arc. It builds a bridge between The Shining, Dr. Sleep, and IT. The mental lockbox introduced in Dr. Sleep is one of the most significant cross-novel mechanics King ever created. It appears in different contexts, sometimes metaphorical, sometimes literal, but always tied to characters with The Shining. Its appearance in Welcome to Derry signals that the series is deeply rooted in King's multiverse rather than being a simple prequel to IT. The idea that Pennywise can manipulate the psyche of a Shiner adds a new layer to its mythology. In the original IT novel, the entity primarily preys on children because their fears are stronger and more malleable. But a powerful Shiner like Dick represents a different kind of banquet, one filled with decades of suppressed trauma. In many ways, Dick Halloran becomes the perfect psychic conduit for Pennywise to exploit.
Take my hand.
Foreshadowing the Black Spot Fire. There's one chilling question that Episode 5 leaves hanging. Now that Dick's box has been opened, will Pennywise use this vulnerability to influence the tragic events at the Black Spot? In King's original novel, the nightclub's destruction is attributed solely to racist human violence. But Welcome to Derry has the opportunity to expand this event, possibly intertwining Pennywise's manipulations with Dick's traumatic past. The show has repeatedly blurred the line between supernatural horror and real-world cruelty, so it's not far-fetched to imagine Pennywise nudging the events leading to the fire, especially with Dick psychically destabilized. Given that Halloran survives the fire in the novels, the series could explore how his open box shapes his reactions, guilt, or memories of the tragedy. This would deepen his character and further tie his trauma to Derry's cycles of violence. Where Dick Halloran goes from here. Despite the harrowing events of Welcome to Derry, we know from the established timeline that Dick eventually regains mastery over his Shining. He becomes a mentor to Danny Torrance, and later a guiding spirit to the adult Dan. But Welcome to Derry gives us a glimpse of an earlier, more vulnerable chapter, one where Pennywise nearly breaks him. The open box raises new questions the series has yet to answer. Will Dick be haunted by new entities he cannot control? Will Pennywise exploit his fears to trigger the Black Spot Fire? How will he rebuild the mental defenses that later make him a powerful mentor? The series is in a unique position. It cannot kill Dick, but it can reshape the scars that define him. Welcome to Derry has taken one of King's most compassionate characters and given him one of the darkest, most emotionally rich arcs in the franchise. And with his box now open, The second half of the season promises even deeper psychological horror. Dick Halloran has always been a survivor. The question now is whether he can survive Pennywise's invasion of his mind, and what new ghosts he'll carry because of it.
Get out. No, 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 no.